So I came to Rice hoping to have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about women and gender studies, but not realizing how big and how long-standing the program was. So once I entered into the program, which happened, I think, my second semester, uh, everything sort of shifted for me. I was concerned that I was going to write a dissertation that wouldn't have heavy gender analysis, and so I was worried about what the program might mean for me in terms of a time commitment if my dissertation wasn't going to be focused on gender in any way. And I spoke to the department or the center coordinator, Angela, and she said, I think by the time you're done with the program, your dissertation has to be about gender. You're going to learn so much. And so I took the leap and took feminist debates, and there was just, for me, a huge paradigm shift in the ways I asked questions and the kinds of questions I asked. I remember being in a seminar with my fellow history colleagues, and we were talking about slavery, I think. It was a course on the Atlantic slave trade, and someone brought up the question of gender. And the conversation probably lasted maybe 30 minutes from there, but it was simply a conversation about women in the slave trade. And without this program, I don't think that I would have been the one to ask the question, so now that we've talked about women, can we also talk about gender? And that shifted the conversation in an entirely different direction, because now we were thinking about the ways that manhood was constructed and the ways that people went about trading slaves. We were thinking about how pregnancy and sexual labor, whether it was a woman's choice with her partner or with a slave master, was all a part of the process of labor. It was producing something that was a commodity and valuable to a slaveholder. And so the program has really helped me ask different kinds of questions than those that I was trained to ask as an undergraduate or as a graduate student. Whether it's in seminar, whether it's the way that I ask questions, whether it's how I think about my dissertation project, or whether it's the ways that I encounter and engage with undergraduates as a TA in seminars. It's just been that all-encompassing. My dissertation project is a study of 1950s Houston, and it's really interested in the intersection of space, crime, race, and gender. Particularly post-1948, racial restrictions were no longer constitutional in home deeds, but Jim Crow persisted in cities like Houston. And so my project is interested in asking the question about how and when crimes occur, and how and when they're policed, and what does a social geography look like when residential segregation is a thing that structures those crimes and structures that policing. This didn't begin as a project that was interested in gender per se, but it is more and more each day becoming something that has to wrestle with the gender implications of crime. I'm currently building a database, a sort of social geography database, where I'm collecting crimes from 2 decades worth of newspapers and putting them on a map. And what I'm finding so far is that the crimes that are policed the most take on the shape of what used to be invisible social barriers, and the map starts to look very concrete. But what I'm also finding is that a great proportion of the crimes, especially the violent crimes, so talking loss of life, sexual assault, and other kinds of bodily harm, so assault with a weapon, are crimes committed against women. And they're often committed against poor women, and they're often committed in women's own homes. There are a set of questions that I have to begin asking now about why these crimes are occurring in these neighborhoods. Like, I can make intuitive sense out of why there might be more property crimes in poor neighborhoods, but I can't make intuitive sense about why there's so much misogyny in these homes and in these communities where poor women of color have been partners, full-time working partners to the men that they're living with. And I also can't make sense of why in so many of these cases a lot of these women refuse to press charges against their mates, or their mates are not found guilty at all of committing any crime. So there are a set of questions that are coming out of the data that didn't necessarily begin with the project. The project was really a project about race. But as Kimberly Crenshaw tells us, you don't have race without gender, and you don't have gender without race and class and sexuality. And so there's the set of complicated questions that are coming out of the work itself that now I'm beginning to wrestle with.